let's talk a little bit more about doming of your abdomen. So when I say doming or bulging, I am talking specifically along your linea alba, which is the connective tissue. So think of fascia that surrounds our muscles, connective tissue that runs along your midline, separating the two sides of your rectus abdominis muscles, those six-pack ab muscles. So that linea alba is what gets stretched and thins out during pregnancy as your baby grows. So that is what we're talking about when we're thinking of diastasis recti, abdominal separation, and doming that occurs along the midline. Okay, so why does the doming occur? It's typically because of a pressure problem. So in our core system, you've got your diaphragm, your pelvic floor at the bottom, your abdominals in the front, and your low back muscles in the back. So that's your core canister. When there's a point that is weaker, which tends to be along that linea alba, because that's what is healing, that's what we're kind of rebuilding strength and letting that tissue get stronger postpartum as your core recovers. When that tissue is weak and there's a lot of pressure in that system, so think during a core exercise of some sort, or it can really be, think of pull-ups, push-ups, anything like that, where you're using your core, and our pressure is going to go out the weakest points, which postpartum typically, and for many people, tends to be the pelvic floor. So, and you would think of leaking or a doming or bulging of the diastasis. So along that midline, you might get some doming or bulging. So basically you've got, you're flat, and then you'll see just kind of a little bit of a bulge. It might be really slight. It can also sink in. So ideally we want that tissue to be firm, feel firm to the touch. It should feel firm and bouncy. We want to limit the doming. It's nothing to be scared of. It just gives you a sign into what's going on in your system. So one rule of thumb is if the doming is very firm to the touch, and then you don't have any control over it. So if you try changing your breath strategy, or try changing the way you're engaging your core, and you're not changing that doming, nothing happens, it stays the same, then maybe that tells us we might need to modify that particular exercise, okay? But if you see the doming, but you still have control over it, so maybe you realize, oh, I was holding my breath there. Let me try doing a nice long exhale, and the doming lessens or goes away completely. That's perfect. That's what we want. That's you managing the pressure in that core system. If you maybe maybe not the exhale, but maybe you try engaging your transverse abdominis, your deep abs a little bit more by pulling your hip bones together. So imagine you're pulling your hip bones together, engage that transverse abdominis, and then maybe it lessens. That's great. So change your strategy first before you modify the exercise. So play around with it. Change your strategy. If the doming gets better, great, keep going. That's might be a good exercise for you. If the doming is really firm to the touch and you don't have control over it, and you're also maybe experiencing symptoms such as heaviness or pressure in the vaginal area, leaking, back pain, things like that, then yes, then we need to modify. So it's all about knowing when to modify. Not all doming is bad and not all doming is equal, okay? So like I said before, if you can change it and lessen it with your breath or a different core engagement strategy, that's great. But if you can't change it, then maybe we need to modify. So let's take a look here and see. So if I do a crunch, I get just a little bit of doming here, okay? So I didn't engage my core or anything before. I just kind of came up into a full crunch, and I get a little doming, okay? So it's very slight, but it's just a little bit of a pressure pushing out on my belly, okay? So let's see here, maybe if I come up into a V-sit, okay? So there again, I get a little bit of bulging, and my deep transverse abdominis muscle isn't kicking on quite as much there, so I actually get that rectus dominance also, which is my your big six-pack muscle. So I get even more of a bulging, more of like that bread loaf where it's kind of sinks in here and my abs kind of pooch out. Okay, so ideally we want everything flat. So again, with the doming, is it firm to the touch? And if you don't have control over it, you're not able to lessen it or take it away with your breath or core engagement, and you also have some other symptoms along with that, then we want to modify. But if you're able to change your breath, change your core engagement strategy, and it goes away, that's great. keep doing that exercise as long as you're not having other symptoms. If you have questions, please reach out. We want to make sure you're getting the most out of all of your exercises.